Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Up Until Now podcast. I am your host, Jeddy Kim.
I am your co-host, Andrew.
Damn it.
You said your last name, didn't you?
Alright, let's try this again. Hi, and welcome to the first episode of Up Until Now podcast. I am your host, Jeddy.
I am your co-host, Andrew.
And just wanted to thank you for clicking in and taking a listen to our podcast. I mean, we're two 25-year-olds just doing this from a bedroom, and being able to have listeners and people that actually do care about like what we have to say and what we want to talk about it's really cool, and I really appreciate that.
All right, I'm just going to give you guys a quick background on our podcast. So the name Up Until Now, how we got that was, if you guys see our description in our podcast, you know that we are two armed individuals with public school knowledge. And we came into this real world realizing that we learned absolutely nothing. And, you know, we've had our share of ups and downs. I feel like we've had more downs than ups, but we'll see where life takes us. We just want to like talk about our lives and talk to other people. Maybe, I'm sure you guys are going through the same thing and probably even worse, who knows? But we just want to, share our opinion, our voices, and maybe we can hear yours too.
So the idea that we got to actually start a podcast started like about almost 3 years ago. Andrew and I went on an 18-day road trip together. It was pretty crazy. But when we were in Seattle, we got lunch with our Airbnb host, and we were just talking to him, and Andrew and I were being our goofy, idiotic selves. Our host, Adam, he said that we should start a podcast, but being like 18, 19 years, 22 years old, no, 22. Holy shit, 22. It just went over our heads, and we're like, whatever. It sounds like a great idea, whatever. It doesn't matter. But up until about last week, it never really clicked to me or to us to start this podcast until things that Andrew went through, and I'll let him explain that.
Yeah, so last week it sort of sparked with us because I was actually going through a pretty rough patch in my life. Like it was pretty bad, and I told Jeddy when I was talking to him that it just felt so good to be able to talk about it, and like I honestly just felt better. Just, I think that's a huge issue that a lot of people go through, not being able to like talk through your problems. And for me, it saved my life. And I think that's when Jeddy realized that we need to talk more. We're best friends. We don't see each other as often. We don't need to talk to each other as much. But when we do see each other and do talk to each other, it's almost as if we just hit the pause button and just press play again. Like nothing changes. Going through lives, like our individual lives, not seeing each other every day, talking to each other every day, it does help being able to talk to someone that's that important to you in your life.
That's kind of what we want to gain from this podcast. We want to be able to really document our journey, not as just best friends, but as just personal individuals, and kind of bringing it into like a similar sphere, similar room, or bring it into the same room, and just really talk it out and really try to find ways to navigate this weird mid-20s quarter-life crisis bullshit. So that's what we're here. And that's why we're talking into mics, being really weird and awkward about it. Just a quick background of just myself is my name is Jedediah Kim. I go by Jeddy, JD. You're going to hear both those names and all three of those names put in intermittently throughout this podcast. So if any name just pretty much starts with a J, that's me. I'm 25 years old. I graduated back in the spring of 2016. I graduated with an advertising major and a communications minor. Currently, right now, I do work for a university in the state of Illinois. I work for their housing department. I also do things with freelance photography and what else? Oh, and social media for luxury hotels. So those are just kind of multiple sources of income, just trying to get that money and pay them bills. I do have a dog, and so does Andrew, but my dog, her name is Jubilee. She is a purebred corgi. Yeah, she's an interesting dog. More about her later in the podcast.
All right, my name is Andrew Chung. I also go by my Korean name every once in a while, Junie. So if you guys ever call out either of those, I will respond. I am also 25. But however, I did have a delayed graduation compared to JD. I recently graduated in May of 2019 with a bachelor's in science of recreation and tourism. Right now, I'm currently working at a Parks and Recreation department in the Indianapolis region. And like JD said, I do also have a dog. Mine is a Husky Shepherd mix. Her name is Moro. I picked her up at the shelter almost a year ago because I was going through, another midlife crisis, being alone.
Midlife crisis? What are you, 50?
Hey, the amount of alcohol I drank during college years, it might as already well be halfway through my life. But yeah, I picked up Moro to help me through some lonely times, studying by myself, being alone. All my family graduated, and then I was just stuck in, school alone by myself, and it was rough. But yeah, I picked her up. It's almost been a year now. Can't wait to see what me and her do next.
Man, that's crazy. Can't believe you've had her for a year.
Yeah, it's we've been through a lot. She has broken a lot of things. Like even my apartment right now. Like you can see if you turn your head. The carpet's all ripped up. No no blinds are up. It's all blankets covering the windows. All the windowsills are broken. But
I love her.
I love her. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, and just for listeners' sake, yes, my dog is 25 pounds. Andrew's dog is about 50 to 60, and they are best friends. Correct. Yep. So just this podcast, we just kind of want to go over and talk about things that you don't really hear about in school, whether that just be like relationships, leasing a car, really just like things that you just never learned in school that include like even just tuition payments, like paying off like your tuition, like that's just a fucking nightmare.
Oh yeah, and even like getting your first car or insurance and all that. Like I didn't learn any of that in school. Like I wish I learned how to manage my finances in school.
Yeah, and I think a big thing that even with us too, just us, you and me, is our parents are very different. My parents have grown up in the States. They speak fluent English and Korean, but like having them to help me guide those like through those things, it was always a big help. But for you, it's completely different.
Yeah, definitely. My parents have been living in the States for 30 plus years now, but they do not speak English. And instead of, my parents guiding me through and helping me through all these times that like after I graduate college, what do I do in life? It was the opposite. It was the other way around. I'm still the one guiding my parents like, hey, you got to go talk to your lawyer about this because it's the law. And they just don't have the knowledge of that because it's just completely different from where they came from. It's just they don't need to worry about that there. But it's hard for them because culture is different. Obviously, the language barrier, it's huge on them. And that's just how it is.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be like an interesting talking point going into the future. I think just kind of keeping that in mind, saying that even though we are almost exactly the same age, mine is like 5 days, but we were growing up and like brought up in like such different parental households, and even just the amount of siblings that we have are completely different. I think just putting those factors into place really just kind of, I don't know, dictates the way that we live our lives and how we like kind of move along with that nuclear family base.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, one big thing was the fact that like I pretty much grew up without my parents, and my grandmother was the one that raised me, and I grew up strictly around Korean culture because my grandma was an OG, and even though like my parents were here in the States, my grandma was still, even though she was like living here, she was still in Korea, living a Korean life in America.
Yeah, for sure. And like it's just so bizarre to think. And in case you guys couldn't get from the podcast, Andrew and I are both Korean Americans. We do identify with both of those cultures, and I think just kind of living in that kind of even that cultural background in schools and stuff, like it's very different. So I think those are going to be like other things that we're going to be talking about on this podcast. Just yeah, just kind of things that we went through in high school and just school in general, and what we're going through currently in our young baby fetus adulthood life. Yeah. Yeah, so currently we're going to be up on like all kinds of social media, and we're going to be hopefully responding to people that want to reach out to us, I guess. If no one reaches out, that's fine, not a big deal. I mean, but the outlooks are there. So you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Up Until Now Podcast. So that's where you can find us on social media. If you guys want to send us an email, you guys can send it to upuntilnowpodcast@gmail.com. I just, again, want to take this time just to thank you for listening to our first episode. It was a longer journey than I thought trying to start this first episode, and I think we're hopefully going to slowly get more natural behind these microphones. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I just want to say thank you again too. This does mean a lot. Again, like we mentioned it earlier, like this was a way for me and JD to communicate too, and we thought might as well share our goofy talks and just insights and hear your voices, hear our voices just with the world. And thank you so much for stopping by, and hopefully you get to hear us again.
Yeah, all right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye. Hello, editing JD coming in, interjecting a little bit. We completely forgot to ask you to like us, rate us, and comment on Apple Podcasts or iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. It really helps Andrew and I just find things to get better at, and hopefully make this podcast a lot better to listen to. So thanks again. Please rate, comment, and subscribe. Thanks. Bye.